As South Africa grapples with the complexities of its national identity, the recent election results have only added to the uncertainty, with multiple political parties vying for power and a government of national unity on the table. The future of the country hangs in the balance. Joining me to discuss this further is political analyst Dr. Ebrahim Harvey. Good afternoon, Doctor, and thank you very much for your time. A very interesting article that you wrote around the national question, or some of the issues that you touch on there about the ANC of late, not talking about non-racialism. You're seeing an ANC that mostly sort of has positioned itself now as an Africanist nationalist party. But before we get to some of your thoughts there, I just want to get your views on the latest development following the emergence of that letter by the Democratic Alliance on some of their demands. 11 cabinet posts, we believe, also deputy ministries for those posts, and also a few DGs, and also even looking to review certain tenders that would have been awarded post just the proclamation of the elections.
Yes, thanks for having me, and good afternoon to you. No, I'm not surprised by these developments. You must remember that the ANC has invited the DA, so the two of them together actually have achieved what you call sufficient consensus. They've reached out, and it's led to a big debate, You can see the ANC's allies, COSATU, SABC, stomping on the ground and having problems. But what they fail to realize, if you look at things in real terms, from 1994, and GNU was adopted in 1996, the ANC and DA have moved in reality closer together. There's what economic, public, social policy differences can you speak of between the ANC and the DA? Although one has to take note of the fact that the DA has got serious problems with the labor market, and with the
Dr. Harvey,
the minimum wage.
Pardon me for interjecting there. If you're saying the ANC and the DA have moved more closer to each other insofar as policy is concerned, some could argue that and say just the NHI, we were speaking to COSATU, just on universal health care, they seem to have differences. Minimum wage, they have differences. Affirmative action, they have differences. And just their approach to the markets. It seems as though there are some differences there, which many have said are quite fundamental differences. You say they've moved closer to each other?
No, well, it depends what you mean by fundamental differences. If you can point out to me, what are the fundamental differences? If you look at macroeconomic policy, you look at public and social policy, you must ask yourself, and you ask that question to me, why has since 2004 June, it's 20 years now, the black townships have been in an unstoppable avalanche of violent, unprecedented protests. So that it speaks to the fact that water, sanitation, and basic services have been commercialized and commodified in the townships. I don't have time to go into that, but anyone who suggests, and in fact the literature makes it clear, and surprises the question, that the ANC and DA in terms of economic policy besides the NHI and besides this, which is important matters, it would be important to see how this turns out when the two biggest parties they're going to clash. There's going to be a lot of knocking of heads, I can tell you, and I don't envy the DA and the NC with the MK and EF in opposition. It's going to be fierce. Look forward to a very dramatic next 5 years, really, with this new administration. But I would argue at length that there's not any big, and in fact, the scientists, go look at the literature, they conclude too that there's no major fundamental differences in policy between the ANC, although, as I've noted, there are issues. There are issues about the minimum wage, basic services, and so on, that one needs to address, and the NHI in particular, how that will be resolved, and how that relates to what I'm contending that there are no serious policy difference is a debate. But I don't. In fact, I think you're going to have big policy issues in this cabinet when, in fact, the NHI and the minimum wage is dealt with, and the ANC will have to deal with it and defend it. And we'd like to see what's going to happen and what Malema, the EFF, and the MK does out of that. But it's not the time and place for me to go at length into why there's been an emerging closeness in policy terms. That's why you think Ramaphosa could reach out to the DA, because they study these things. They can see that the DA, the way it has also moved it's more likely for there to be rapprochement to the DA, despite the NHI and the living wage issues. And this is why Ramaphosa has reached out to the DA, as the first party. Well, I mean, after the 40% that they got, the DA got about 20-21. So naturally, they were the other partner, what is in fact a coalition government. I side with those people who have a debate about government of national unity. I think to all intents and purposes, there are a lot of other smaller parties joining now, but you're talking about a coalition government, than a government of national unity, really.
Now, Doctor, I want to then talk about your assertions of a shift that you've observed from non-racialism to ethnic and racial politics that you speak of post the elections.
Yes, no, the election results is just a very sinister thing. If you look at the column that I penned, it was in relation to this. I mean, a lot of ethnic, tribalistic identity politics has come to the fore in the election results. Just look at the Patriotic Alliance. I mean, virulently, as far as I'm concerned, xenophobic, and the inroads it has made amongst the colored working class majority in the Western Cape. You look at MK, the subtext is there. It's a rising Zulu nationalism, and it's not just KZN, it goes beyond that. And largely, those people that Zuma has appealed to and that has responded to the elections are Zulu-speaking people. All I'm saying is at the end of the day, it's a very significant feature of the election results, the headway and the dangers it presents to our politics and constitutional democracy, which is anchored in non-racialism, And what is happening here is a subversion of the principles and tenets of non-racialism, And I think it's a very sad reflection, and I don't know what's going to happen in this term coming now, because both MK and the PA, have made significant impact, and they're going to likely have a strident voice within Parliament. And how their issues are going to be dealt with, especially when it gets painted with an ethnic, tribal, or racial brush.
It seems your views, pardon me for interjecting there, it seems your views are quite similar to those of the Democratic Alliance's Helen Zille, because just after the elections, when we were at the results center, this was something she actually stated, that what she had observed as well was that there was some sort of a voting according to identity politics or perhaps ethnicity, something that the MK party took exception to say that really what you're saying here is that those who voted for the MK have no agency. They just voted according to ethnicity.
No, that's not true. Our politics, let me tell you, it's been a bit subdued, and now it's played its ugly face in this election. There's always been subterranean. Look at the Western Cape. Ask yourself why the DA is still the governing party from the late 1990s. Because the colored working class majority has felt alienated by your ANC and what I accuse them of an Africanist majority and chauvinism. That is the reason why for 2 decades, although the UDF is born in Mitchell's Plain, the biggest colored township, just look what happened. They lost the first Uhuru elections, 1994. They were trounced by the Nationalist Party. You have to ask yourself, and if you want to talk about race and racialism, bedeviling our democracy, study what has happened in the Western Cape, and then ask yourself, why is it that the majority of the working class rather gives their vote to the DA, than to the ANC. And it's very interesting, but any suggestion that this election is for the first time giving rise to ethnic, tribal, racial tensions amongst the electorate is false. I think there's been a lot of it, but, it's kind of subtext, subterranean current, and now it's coming to the fore. And it's coming to the fore, why? It's a reflection of the deepening socio-economic crisis in the country. That is why when there's a fierce competition for dwindling resources, that is what globally is also the reason why you have this resurrection of ethnic tensions. It's always in the midst of a deepening economic crisis.
Doctor, thank you very much for your insights this evening.